Welcome back to the Dark Reading News Desk here at RSA. Terry Sweeney, contributing editor to Dark Reading, and I'm joined now by Donna Johnson, CMO at Cradlepoint and head of marketing at Ericson Enterprise Wireless Solutions. Donna, thanks for joining us on News Desk.
Thank you.
We
Thanks for
are
having me.
talking about 5G cellular and its associated risk, which is a great topic and an overdue topic for security conferences like this one. Thanks for being here. Let's just dive right into it. What are the current barriers to 5G adoption where security is concerned? And are we addressing service providers or enterprises who can really foresee the 5G applications on a private level?
Great question. And let me just start by saying that we think that 5G is a transformational technology for enterprises. And I think maybe it was oversold a few years ago, but we really are starting to see the power of it and its ability to transform the way businesses operate. But you're right, there's still some barriers to it. Data plans are still a question mark. Even reliability of the network can still be a question, but security is absolutely up there in the concerns that we hear. I think that's largely because it's an unknown network. Many enterprise IT professionals aren't that familiar with cellular, except as a phone technology. And even the fact that it came out of consumer space, I think sometimes leads people to not really think of it as a enterprise quality secure connection.
Not ready for the corporate applications, that kind of acid test.
Now, I think it is, or
Sure.
I wouldn't be here talking to you, obviously. But I think that there's just some misconceptions that occur. And so, when you say, do we talk to the enterprises or the service providers, and to some extent, we talk to both because we want to make sure enterprises are comfortable with the use of cellular, that they know the security techniques and technologies they need to apply to it. And then we talk to the service provider about educating their customers and bringing 5G to more enterprises as an option for connectivity, knowing how it can really help businesses.
So it sounds like with enterprises really taking on 5G as a connectivity tool, that we're looking at an increase in connected devices and by association, increase in the size of the attack surface. Is this something that maybe also is giving them some pause, that like they're struggling enough with the current size of what their attack surface is? Help me understand that.
I mean, absolutely. And 5G didn't cause that problem, if you think about it. The growth of networks is caused by a lot of business and macro trends. So for example, people working at home is creating a growth in the attack surface. But certainly the use of IoT, increased use of IoT within a fixed location and outside of it is absolutely increasing the attack surface. And 5G makes that possible in a way that you couldn't before. So you know that you have a high performance, reliable connection. So enterprises are taking advantage of that. But it definitely increases the attack surface. Often you're out now of your sort of corporate shell, your corporate protection in the building of firewalls and things like that. And you're out into the public. You're using potentially a public network. And we feel like, to some extent, you only need one weak spot in your network for a bad actor to get in. So the enterprise has to protect against all the potential weak spots. And the more your network expands, the more of those potential weak spots there are.
You mentioned IoT. It sounds like there may be also some parallels with operational technology, the network devices like thermostats, fluorescent lights, HVAC that have proven to be super vulnerable just because they weren't really designed to be networked like IoT devices or 5G or conventional IT technology.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you think about the number of companies out there building devices, it's exploding, right? It's a great technology. It's going to revolutionize efficiencies within business, particularly as the cost of employment goes higher and higher. But not every company out there can be a security expert. So how does an IT professional know that what they're getting onto their network is going to be safe? I would almost argue that they can't. So they have to build their network in such a way that they're protected against that. Now, years ago, when I first started working with Cradlepoint, one of the things we talked about was building air-gapped or isolated networks. So when people brought IoT or OT into the network, we would connect directly to cellular and take them off of the corporate network. So the corporate network was safe, and if they breached their IoT device, they were on an isolated network and they couldn't hurt that. Well, as IoT devices proliferated, you had to get more and more and more of those isolated networks. So that wasn't going to scale. You couldn't manage that. So what we're turning to now is software-defined ways of doing isolation, or really zero trust. that enables you to have different IoT devices, different people connecting from different places, all sharing a network, ideally sharing a 5G network, but it could be any type of network. And how do you enforce isolation so that you do your best to protect against any breach, but you also do your best to limit the reach of any breach?
Any other strategies that enterprises are looking at as a means to, as you say, air gap or keep their own networks and databases clean or more protected?
Absolutely. I mean, one of the things we're looking at is private networks. You mentioned that. So using things like cellular technology for a private network, so that you're connecting over cellular technology, but you're staying away from that public network. So that's one nice way of isolating a network. And we see that a lot with large OT environments like you're talking about. Manufacturing and factories where they have a lot of things connected, but they don't want them connected to Wi-Fi. They don't want them connected directly to the internet or a public network. So they're actually building their own private cellular network. Now that's sort of an extreme case of isolation. We also see people turning to SASE, which is of course one of the big themes here at RSA this year. But SASE basically allows you to take the cloud and have your security policies within the cloud, so that as things or people connect from anywhere, they carry those security policies along with them. And in addition to the policies, there's a recognition. So even as people move around or devices join the network, there's a good identification and recognition, often SIM-based, to say, who is this? Are they in the right place? And what security policies should we apply?
And this avoids the cumbersome, time-consuming requalification process to let this device access.
And setting up all those policies, exactly. So by creating it zero trust inherently, what we let you do is build the network out where effectively no one has access to anything, but everyone's identified. And then you can gradually layer on, if you want, additional connections that limit any risk of lateral movement. But it's very well adapted to the 5G network. So it's very low overhead. We're not using heavy IPsec or VPN tunnels that take up too much bandwidth. So we really want to adapt to not just 5G as it's changing the way people work and what they connect, but literally 5G as a connectivity source, and making sure that we're taking advantage of it and not overburdening it. And eventually, one last thought, we hope to add slicing into that as some of the SA networks start to roll out. And network slicing gives you another alternative for effectively a private slice across that public 5G network.
Donna, take us out with some advice for customers who may be considering 5G as a connectivity option. What sorts of questions should they be asking themselves?
Well, I would go back to our first comment, which is throw away misconceptions and myths. Don't think of it as the phone network that you use when you're driving. 5G has abundant bandwidth, in many cases more bandwidth than broadband. It is built to be extremely reliable, extremely resilient. It's often the first network, for example, that's recovered in case of a natural disaster. There's security built into the network, but it doesn't prevent you from having to do the normal security things that you would do, honestly, with almost any type of transport network. But really give it a look and see how can it transform your business. Don't think of it as just connectivity. Think of it as opening up new ways of doing business.
Great stuff. Donna, I so appreciate you being here and breaking some new ground on the RSA News Desk that we've been doing. 5G has been conspicuous by its absence. Thanks so much for educating me and our viewers.
Thanks for having me. Have a good event.
We've been talking with Donna Johnson of Cradlepoint and Ericson. This has been Terry Sweeney for Dark Reading News Desk. Thanks for joining us for this segment. We'll see you next time.